You know, I never imagined that a movie about sex work would win 4 Academy Awards at the Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Screenplay, Best Editing, like some of the big major awards. And what this tells me is that this topic, sex work, sex workers, it's bubbling up in the public consciousness. But I don't think it's quite what people think it is. I think it runs deeper than the surface. And that's what we're going to get into this week, you guys, because we're going to talk all about the path of the pleasure priestess.
Welcome to a new paradigm, a new way of being, free from shame, self-limitation, or cultural programming. Welcome to a new you, a new world, full of endless possibilities. Welcome to your Tantric awakening.
So as she accepted her award, Mikey Madison said this: I want to recognize and honor the sex worker community. I will continue to support and be an ally. All of the incredible people, the women that I've had the pleasure of meeting from that community, has been one of the highlights of the entire incredible experience making this film. This was her highlight. Sean Baker, the director, when he accepted one of his awards, said, I want to thank the sex worker community. My deepest respect. I share this with you. Previously, at a press conference for the Cannes Film Festival in 2024, he said he believes that sex work should be decriminalized and not in any way regulated because it is a sex worker's body and up to them to decide how they will use it in their livelihood. Now, what is interesting, I love that this is on national television coming up for public discussion. I want to go back to what Mikey said. She said it was the highlight of her experience. We've previously interviewed sex workers for this show, and the overwhelming theme that comes up is most of the time it's not even sex that people are looking for. They're looking to be seen. They're looking to be held. They're looking to be healed. Even if there wasn't any direct healing going on, I suspect that just through the interactions, there was a lot of energy exchange and healing just naturally taking place. From the sex workers I've worked with, they are energy channels. That's what attracts them to the industry in the first place. They feel energy more than most people. They radiate more energy than most people. But, you know, whereas these healers, these witches, at one point in history, they built temples to honor them. Now they practice their craft in brothels and street corners. So I think, you know, the world's oldest profession, yes, but it feels like a lot of what it was really about has been lost in the midst of time. And today we're getting just the surface level, so no wonder it's so misunderstood. You know? And I guess a good place to start, maybe, what is the path of a priestess? What does it mean to be a priestess? What comes up for you when I say that? The pleasure priestess, the path of the priestess.
Yeah, it's a deep one. It's an initiation. It's one of the major archetypes of what I would identify as being erotically expressed, right? But it's a way of life. Priestess is devotion. Priestess is being able to love yourself so deeply that it's a natural way of who you are. It's the attention to details. And, you know, before I understood the word priestess, I knew pleasure. I knew that word. And I think it's important to provide some context, especially for those that are new to this channel or new to my story, for example. But my journey into pleasure was quite an interesting one. And I'd like to take a little moment to touch on that, because pleasure for me was, there's a dance between innocence, right? The innocence of pleasure. And some might say that it's even connected with joy, right? Like follow your joy, then you'll find the pleasure. And so I believe at the core, pleasure priestess is like loving yourself, right? And so my journey into understanding pleasure in light of, for example, stepping into womanhood, which is so many women's journey, especially if you're going from the maiden to the mother archetype, and that like playful side going into more of like from reactivity to more empowerment. So I was given this beautiful statement at a time when I was really reclaiming my divine feminine, and I was leaving, didn't fully understand it at the time, but I was on my way out of my prior life, which was as a Christian woman. And as a Christian woman, I was really suppressing pleasure. I was suppressing pleasure. Why? Because in light of sacred sexuality, if I'm speaking about that kind of pleasure, I was really abiding, very devoted to the doctrine I was being told, which is purity culture, which was in response to the AIDS movement. It was a way to like keep people from getting diseases, essentially. So I avoided pleasure in my sacred sexuality journey for a long time. And so when I was going to this ministry school, I actually dropped out of this ministry school at the time, and I was getting into more of the esoteric arts. I got my first witchy deck, and it was all about, the divine feminine. Mary Magdalene's on the front. I'm like, this chick, what is she doing here? But I was told by this woman, pleasure is your birthright. And I don't even remember who this person was or how this came into my field, but this was in response in the same energy field of me leaving the church. And I just knew something was off. Like I just knew it in my heart, and maybe I could touch on it later. But when she said pleasure is your birthright, I was like, what does that even mean? What does it mean to own your pleasure? And to be honest with you, at that time, I mean, this is like probably 2019, 2018, around that time. But I felt so in my pleasure for choosing my voice, choosing to go down my own path. So pleasure for me was like learning to love self-pleasure rituals, aka like masturbation. Like that in of itself, I remember when I went to that junction of my life, and I was afraid to be facing this because it was so looked down upon amongst my peers. But I knew it was right. I knew it was the right path, because some would say it's intuition. It was a gut instinct. And so if I'm talking about the pleasure priestess, I mean, again, there's so many layers to it, but it started with this hunch. It was this like pull within myself to really understand, what does this woman actually mean? And it honestly involved in me reclaiming my pleasure, taking a step back from the collective group. I reclaimed my pleasure by reclaiming my agency. So that's where I'll start.
That's interesting, because when you first think of priestess, you think of leading a group in worship, leading a group in devotion. But really, it sounds like what you're speaking into is the devotion first and foremost is to yourself. It's almost like you're the divine, you're the sacred object. That devotion and reverence towards yourself, towards your body, towards the sensations that it's capable of feeling. Because I guess like this is how I would describe the path of pleasure. You get out of your head, you connect with your body. When you connect with your body, you're going to connect with your intuition. Okay, and this is really the path of the priestess, is to dive deep into your intuition. When a priestess is performing a healing on others or leading a group in some kind of ceremony or prayer, she's channeling. she becomes a gateway. She becomes an open channel.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the good ones say it didn't come from me, it came through me. You know, it's about, you start by putting yourself deeper in touch with yourself and then your intuition. And through that journey, through that path,
Mm-hmm.
you eventually become in touch with something much, much greater.
Mm-hmm.
Not greater, because there's no better, worse, that you hadn't known till this point that you were a part of.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm trying to say, being a priestess is about tapping in.
Yeah, attunement, energetic alignment. It's about finding your center, to me. And I would like to touch on, because when I think of priestess, it's to me the personal evolution of my journey from being in roles where I was more in that dance pastoral energy and how that translated into the priestess energy archetype. Because for me, in thinking about dance pastoral work, which is what I was doing essentially, I remember at a time I lived in a house full of devotees of Christianity, and I was part of leading the dance team. I was a dance pastor leader in that sense, and I was really invited to read the room at any time. And at the time, it was very much like attuned to the Holy Spirit or the energy within. That was my verbiage at the time. But whenever I felt the pull, I would go out and dance in front of people. And then moving, and essentially what I was doing was moving energy. And I wouldn't have, spoke on it like that, but I was attuning to my spirit. And at the time, that's what I was connecting with. But yeah, there's so many layers to it, because if we bring up the word priestess, which is something that I didn't know as a Christian, it's also the dance too between like that. I hear that pastor word because I think a lot of people may like, ooh, like there's a lot of connotation to that. Like some people, have different experiences around that. But I think as a priestess, at least in that archetype, it's you're tapped in so much to yourself. So naturally you want to raise everyone up with you and help them reach their highest potential. Like, for example, I'm working with a psychic priestess. She's like a very psychic medium, very powerful woman. And how I feel in her presence is she's helping all of us ascend and evolve and go to our next level. And so, yeah, it's a really interesting dance because, the pleasure, the choice to own your pleasure is such a beautiful one, and one I would love to celebrate in everyone. That's like my passion.
You become a devotee of pleasure.
And whatever that means, yeah.
Yeah. Well, someone who appreciates the sacredness of it.
Mm-hmm. I would even say like the sacredness of life itself, because I was invited by someone recently, and it was really interesting for me to acknowledge that this is not necessarily about being in a room, which is how it operated for me, at least in like the dance pastoral role, and this idea of being a pleasure priestess of sorts. For me, it's the invitation to bring it out into the world and how I operate in my life. And so it's like a weaving. It's how attuned are you to yourself, to the earth, to your surroundings? How attuned are you to your emotional body, your nervous system, and how this is all impacting you day to day, moment to moment?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you said moving energy.
Mm-hmm.
And when we read the descriptions of the ancient temple priestesses in Egypt, in Babylon, in Mesopotamia, they are described as temple dancers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I fully believe from the dreams, from the visions I've had, that they were moving energy. It's not just choreography for visual entertainment. they are moving energy in themselves, in the room, and in the audience and or participants. Absolutely. The foundations of Tantra: breath, sound, and movement.
Yeah, I can think of so many times where I danced in front of people, and I've danced in so many contexts, like competition dancing, choreographed, ecstatic dancing. I've moved my body in so many ways, and how I learned it back in the day was, it's almost like there's as a Christian, past Christian, I saw it as my way of interceding, and meaning like interceding on other people's behalf. I take it a different approach, I would say, as someone that dances and moves energy. Is my desire is like, as a priestess, is like, just to exude that which is already within me. There's no trying to change anything. There's just here to be and express. And that's what I find pleasure in. It's like finding pleasure in the mundane, finding pleasure in the devotion. Talk about pleasure priestess and what that looks like. It looks like, for me, for example, I've been showing up every Friday on, I call it like Friday, like in devotion of the divine feminine. And that's how I find right now what pleasure priestess means to me. It's actually me, myself and I, and myself looking at my mirror, or myself in the mirror, and doing mirror work and really looking at my soul through my gaze. And that's been really fun too. So yeah, there's so much to it. This conversation, honestly, layers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would you agree that then there's, even if people can't put words on it like you just did, that we are all in some way seeking exactly that deeper connection to something sacred? You know, it's why you stop to smell a flower. It's why you linger and look at a painting. We are all longing to touch something sacred. And I guess, you know, a priestess always leads you back to yourself. Right? And that's really the difference between spiritual organizations that become cult-like versus ones that are genuinely trying to help people's ascension. And I would say the difference is the false gurus will put the attention on themselves, whereas the ones sincerely seeking to help you will help you put your attention back on yourself. They're leading you back to you. That's really where the sacredness is waiting.
Yeah, we're all here to remember why we came here. And when I recognize that in myself, that I chose this path and I chose to forget to remember, like, it's taken the pressure off as well around so many aspects of like needing to belong and just having a higher level of discernment and self-respect, and also dignity, right? Around the sacredness of understanding that my soul came here to learn and to grow through all these moments so I can become the alchemist, become the high priestess, because it's magic. It's, you know what it is? Like, when I think about one of the core pillars of what pleasure is, or just this art and just being, is like, it's learning to receive. I mean, that keeps coming up, I think, in our conversations a lot. It's like the art of receiving is so important, because I feel that if we're going to talk about attunement to remembering who we are, it's de-armoring our hearts, as well as, you know, for de-armoring our bodies, de-armoring whatever that means, your yoni, your lingam. Like, we live in at least a lot of people in America, it's like so many people are guarded. So many people are trying to protect themselves. And I understand. I understand why. Yet, as a pleasure priestess, as someone that's devoted to pleasure, and like, I remember earlier this week, I saw a bee on the floor, on the ground. I was doing some stretching, and I was like attuning to what this bee was doing, because this bee was like moving in circles. And I looked it up, and it was saying that
You
like
streamed it for me too.
yeah,
I
it
was
says
able
that
to-
bees when they're doing that, it's kind of like they injected something that's making them like high, or their life is ending. And I just like ended up being a little like doula in that moment of like, thank you so much for all the hard work you did. I know you did so much. And it just, to me, that's what brought me pleasure is like.
That's the second time you've done that.
Mm-hmm.
Remember we were present for the passing of a bee
Bees are just
at our friend's place
me.
in Topanga, yeah.
Well,
that's twice you've
mm-hmm.
been doula to a bee. Wow.
Well, I think that's what
Talk
part
about
of being
a sacred moment.
Well, that's also another like segue I think is important to acknowledge, like pleasure. You know, what is pleasure? Like pleasure is also a dance on the same coin of pain. And I think when I have allowed myself to feel my pleasure, I think it's also the deepest initiation to feeling your pain, because we've all gone through things. And it's recognizing that even though we've gone through things that like, you know, we don't have to be a victim to what we've gone through. And that's what I've loved of even just witnessing life and cycles and the human experience, the dance between so many emotions, for example. Like today, like I felt so much, like I was clearing so much. And like, I think even today we were laughing hysterically. And I was just like, isn't this interesting? And in my ego, I think in a part was like, my mind was like trying to attach, like, what's going on, you know? And I realized, you know, this is the journey. This is the journey. So,
well, let's talk about that, because you spoke into receiving, right? And such a simple word, such a simple concept, but it is often really difficult to do,
right?
When you really look at it. So let's talk about blocks to pleasure.
You
know, let's talk about like, you feel some of that pain, you see maybe a glimpse of your shadow self, and it scares you, so you put all your effort into suppressing it, or suppressing the pain from the past because it's too painful to deal with. What are some common blocks to pleasure, and what can we do about them?
Common blocks to pleasure.
How can we work through them once we've identified them?
Common blocks. I mean, if I'm just speaking for myself, if I'm talking about receiving, it's because my nervous system doesn't feel safe. So one of the blocks I've seen in the art of receiving is capacity. And this is honestly something I'm actively working on every day, because what happens is, I mean, think about our body. Our body is made of muscles. It's made up of meridian. It's energy centers. I mean, one of the things I do daily to like help purge is like EFT tapping, for example. Like we are made of neural pathways where energy is either moving or not. So I think when I think about blocks, truly, I've come to really revere the nervous system. And so what I've had to learn, and I've learned this through acknowledgement, right? Accepting like, oh my gosh, I'm fawning right now, is acknowledging that one of the biggest blocks I felt to pleasure was, if I'm talking about suppression, it's numbing, for example. So one of the blocks I was doing was numbing to my humanity. And if I'm answering your question of like, what's a block to pleasure? Like asking yourself, where am I numbing in my life? Because if you want to experience more pleasure, you're going to need to access your sensuality. So really, even as I'm talking about that, like bring that up, like even take a moment, like close your eyes, or just take a moment to like really, when you think about where do I feel numb? Attune to where you're numb. Where do you feel numb in your body? And then I would even invite you to where you feel numb. Say you're by yourself or something, just like caressing your arms or wherever you're feeling numb. And then I would even mention like bring your awareness to that place, because that's where maybe there's energy blocking. And I'm all about the body. I'm inviting you into the body, because if we're looking at the body as a nervous system, as a somatic experience, it's really important to like bring that like slowness, that sensuality. And it honestly reminds me, beloved, of burlesque and what burlesque has done for me as a woman. And I think burlesque is very pleasure or priestess energy. But it reminds me of what I've actually led people in, is like, how intentional are you with like self-soothing your nervous system? Like, do you give yourself pleasure? Or hold yourself? And so to answer your question, if you're feeling blocked, doing that exercise, like, are you numb? Do you feel numb? Because if you're numb, you're not allowing something in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're numb, you're resisting it, and there's nothing wrong with you in that, but it's likely because you're protecting yourself. There's a video actually that's going around right now on the internet, and it really moves me because I get it, because I see myself in this scene. There's a video going around right now on Instagram, at least. It's a cat. It's a little cat in a cage, and the cat is like has been abused, and the cat's like, and there's this this mom that's coming into the cage slowly to sit right next to the cat, but the cat's like threatened. It's a threat. The body of that nervous system of that cat is like trying to take in all this information right now. And so it's so beautiful to watch, because this cat slowly like makes his way or her way into the cat cage. And it reminds me honestly of like what love is and how you can actually heal these blocks. It's what I love about it is like this cat is really showing like what it really means to allow yourself to receive and open. Because once that cat realized, oh, this older cat really is not here to harm me, okay? I'm not having to fight for my life. That cat relaxed. And so that's how I see the journey into pleasure. Because if you've ever, been impacted by anything traumatic, which is all of us, it can really block our ability to receive, because we're afraid, because we're shutting down, we're more hands off. And I'll be honest in saying that's been a part of my journey. I've had to really consciously learn how to receive love, receive touch, receive my own pleasure. And it's been a mission for me to expand my pleasure as well, because personally right now I'm expanding my wealth holding capacity, because this woman has some big goals and desires. I want to do a lot with what money can bring the collective community. And so I've been on this journey right now of pleasure, finding the pleasure of allowing my body to receive my own life force, my own, like, even to me, like feeling your own pain is expansion. Like, until you feel, it's going to remain stuck. It's so, if that makes sense. And the biggest journey I would say is, as you're going through unlocking these blocks or moving through them, really allow yourself, it's almost like a parent, which is a big part of my journey, like parenting myself over and over again. Judging yourself for feeling blocked and not able to receive. Like, we don't need to do that. As humans, we don't need to like be our worst inner critic, which is, sometimes it's our default mechanism. It's like, yeah. So love yourself in that. And I know that's a big quest for so many of us, but that's the path. The path of pleasure is the path of sensuality and feeling and going through death and rebirth cycles and like recognizing the sacredness of it all. Like right now we're going into like a full moon eclipse portal. It's intense. You'll be feeling the shedding. if you haven't already been feeling it. We're in Venus retrograde, so there's just a lot of like, take this off, let that go, And for me, and I'll say this last thing is, it's helping me understand the journey of life and appreciate it, because I know those pleasurable moments. They're everywhere around us and every day, but even in those peak moments of pleasure. And think about that, like those peak moments of pleasure. And I don't know, inviting myself to what are those moments for me, but it's about, to me, pleasure and priestess path is sustainability. How can you sustain that dance with yourself over time? How can you like dance and weave all that together, which is Tantra?
Well, that's one of the things my teacher used to tell me is Tantra is ultimately, it's not just meditating on a regular basis and getting really, really good at it, because meditation helps you develop that energy awareness and that connection to your intuition.
Yeah.
But it's not just about developing a regular meditation schedule and practice. It's that Tantra is living your whole life in a state of meditation.
Yeah.
So you get deeply lost in every single sensation, taste, sound, smell, but you're still simultaneously fully present. And that's kind of the state that I would describe as Tantra.
Yeah.
Having both of those experiences simultaneously.
Yeah, I really agree with you there. Like, presence is such a practice. It's a muscle. And everyone's journey is different. And it comes down to discipline. It comes down to like, what is presence for you? And allow yourself to be, not even just be, but receive what is around you. And I think that's what's pleasurable, especially, our walk we just did a few days ago. It was, the more and more I walk, the more I connect with nature, the more I'm like, whoa. Like, you even received a download as we're walking. I was like, what? Like, it's about being in the moment. Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah. A book that did, or a movie that came up earlier for me, we were talking about the Oscars movie. I don't know if you remember the Sessions movie we watched. And,
well, that's a totally different kind of sex worker. That's, that's a clinical doctor, a somatic body worker.
Right. Yeah. And it was just, why that movie came up is it reminds me of that other one with the male and the woman, and she's going through, the older woman that comes in after her husband dies. Do you remember that one? We watched it. I can't even think of the name of it, but basically, the Sessions movie, this man, he hadn't had sex because he has an iron lung. And yeah, this therapist woman basically came in and helped him experience pleasure, like being caressed. And I remember we watched that together, and I remember even the first time I watched it, I wept at the end, because I was like, something locked into me to recognize pleasure is truly everyone's birthright. And to experience pleasure it's so innocent. And there's a scene in that movie where like he's able to receive more pleasure because she guides him into this meditation where he reconnects with his inner little boy and the time he literally could walk and didn't need the iron lung. And I was just like, oh, that to me is a pleasure priestess of any kind. She's able to tune into what someone may need and is able to guide and empower that person to feel what is, of course, it's like that phrase of like, of course you're meant to experience this. Like,
and sometimes they don't even know what it is they need. You help them come to that realization. It might be just a vague feeling of something, but you help kind of crystallize what the need is so then it can be fulfilled, because it feels like if your energy is blocked, your evolution is blocked. Your creativity is blocked. Your income flow is blocked. These are all different forms of energy. You know, yes, you're helping them rediscover sensation, which in itself is powerful. It is our birthright. I mean, we're all born into bodies. We deserve to experience them. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're also helping them heal traumas. You're helping them get inspired. You know, maybe they make the next great cure, the next great invention. Like, pleasure and the ability to connect without blocks, without limitations, without constraints is like, it really feels like the next step in our evolution, physical and spiritual. Like, the divine was never meant to be something outside of us. This is the big lie of religion. Because when you're looking outside yourself, you'll never find it. You're going to forever go on seeking. You see, repeat customer. Now they got you. No. You know, it's here. You don't find it out there. You find it here.
It's interesting because it reminds me of the poetry of life. Like, I think it's a lot of my Scorpio moon placement, conjunct Pluto. But to me, it's finding the beauty of feeling. And like you were mentioning, your heart. Like, when I see myself feel, and this is like a reframe live in a deeper way, because I'm always reframing and like, ooh, tweaking. But like today, for example, I felt, I was purging. I was like letting go. I was like, oh my God. And there was a moment where my heart felt like it was like, right? And that is what being a human is all about. It's the direct path of empathy and compassion for yourself first and foremost. And that's the journey of loving yourself, because it's like this.
That is the priestess path.
Yeah. Well, it's for all of us. If I'm being honest with you, I think it's something everyone can tap into, because it's, if I break those words down, and I don't even know the dictionary definitions of all of them, but like, I would say it's being a steward of your own joy, or your own, what lights you up, like following what lights you up. I remember someone saying this, and it like really spoke into my journey, but life's about following what lights you up. At least for me, I'm speaking as a human design generator, but like, I'm here to respond. I think you and I have the same responding types. And so the biggest part of my journey, and like what makes me feel like a pleasure priestess, just someone that's attuned, is like, I respond to the little nudges inside of me. And if something lights me up, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. And I just run with it, and I flow, and I let my creativity open. Like, for example, Lady Gaga's new album. I watched or listened to it the first day it came out, and you know, she's been a big part of my journey and her music, and more so in the last few years, honestly, because she's helped me understand my own like womanhood and, you know, understanding bisexuality and all the things there. But I remember listening to that song here, and it was Friday. I think it came out Friday. It might have been Thursday. But anyways, I listened to the song Garden of Eden, and I was like, immediately my brain was like, oh. I remember listening to it, I was like, I'm going to dance to this. And I literally danced a few hours later in the studio, and it was just so cool because I literally put that music on and I blasted it. No one's in the studio, just me, myself, and I. And I blasted it and I started crying because I was like, this is what it is. This is it. This is me being a pleasure, like in my pleasure, and this is what it is. And it's bringing me tears. I'm crying. Like I was feeling the complexity of it. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to create a little dance. And then what did I do? I created that dance and then I recorded it and then I posted it online. And then the meaning behind why I was doing it was connected to Lilith because it's about the Garden of Eden. And it made me feel connected to you. It made me feel connected to Lilith, and Lilith being the one that is representative of the snake of, reminding us to have a voice, which is a big part of my journey right now. And just like knowing that my voice matters and knowing that pleasure is so personal, right? Everyone has their pleasure. I mean, what's your pleasure?
Well, I have many.
Yeah.
Well, one of my greatest pleasures is seeing people in pleasure. This is part of what draws me to temple work. Part of it is understanding the human experience on a deeper level, experiencing humanity on a deeper level. But when those blocks get overcome, when those traumas get healed, like seeing that release, seeing a person, I don't know, touch a different world, yeah.
What does that look like?
That's one of my pleasures. Like even like, you realize like when I'm teaching eye gazing meditation, sitting across from a person, when they have that first profound spiritual moment, when they connect with, something beyond the 3D reality for that first time, I get to see that happen.
So it's witnessing
I get
them.
to see it in their eyes. So yeah, whether it's pleasure or bliss or that kind of spiritual kind of
why does that move
awakening, that's just it. It moves me. Why do people go to an opera? Why do people, read a novel or something? They're looking for something that moves them. This is what moves me.
So witnessing someone see themselves in another light beyond this world, maybe beyond what we think is in front of us. I'm like, tell me more.
Well, that's just it. The moment they realize there's more, that moment. And if you think about it throughout time, isn't that what priests and priestesses have always done? Is assisted people in that process.
How?
Lead them back to themselves.
Yeah, I was like, how have you seen that in yourself within this partnership? And then like, yeah, with me. Like, have you... Because isn't life all about... Life's all about being the observer, right? And like bearing witness, and that's what union is all about. At least for me, it's like we're constantly vibing, and even when we have moments, we're like, whoa.
Life, matter, particles couldn't exist without an observer. We know that from physics done back in the 1920s, the double-slit experiment. Particles behave differently when we're not observing them, when we're not taking measurements to study their properties. Left to their own devices, they behave like a wave. They're not even particles. They cease to exist and become something else. But the moment we take a measurement, now it's a particle. Now it's solid matter.
Yeah.
And if you get enough of them together, they make something you can touch and react off of. But the moment you look away, they literally cease to be solid. They become a wave of energy.
That's why I like to speak to my water now in a deeper way, because I see it as like, I believe it. And I believe it's shifting the consciousness of the water to like nourish me in a deeper way. But yeah, I am curious. I'll go first. But like a big thing that I've seen in our relationship is like seeing the pleasure available in you. It's been, there's so many moments that we've shared, but like I can even think about when we went to Disneyland that one time, or the little, like seeing you go on some of like Star Wars rides and seeing like your inner child like come online and like just feel free in that experience and that day. It was just like such a beautiful moment. And I can even think about so many times, like even in moments like you've had like deep emotional purges of like feeling your heart and grieving or letting go. Like it's been pleasurable to, I've been reframing my view of pleasure, like in understanding and appreciating like when you as a man like feel your feelings, like it's so beautiful, it's powerful. And I think in this day and age, a lot of men avoid trying to feel their feelings because, you know, they're told to like be tough and like not feel the things. But I have found, I just want to acknowledge that, like the appreciation and seeing you bear that more just forwardly, because I didn't necessarily see that growing up.
Well, sometimes it's tears because it's cathartic release.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, absolutely. And sometimes they're tears of pure reverence because you so fall in love with something. A piece of art, a piece of music, a sensation, an experience. Suddenly you experience your oneness with the universe, right? The Japanese actually have a word for this. Yugen. To be in total awe of the universe. There's actually a word for it, yugen. And feelings, emotions, they make impressions. You know, I love that you're speaking to your water now. Like there was a whole study done. It was documented in the book, Hidden Messages of Water. Dr. Emoto Musaru, he took water crystals. He used the microscope so you could see the individual droplets of water, and he would start lowering the temperature 1 degree at a time, little by little. And the exact moment that the water started to turn into an ice crystal, the crystals started to form, he would take a photo through his microscope. And the ice crystals are shaped differently depending on the emotion that's being felt nearby, the word that's being said to the water, the place where you take the water glass.
Yeah.
Mount Fuji makes these beautiful crystals, right? Geometrical in shape. You take it to the site of the, Hiroshima, where the bomb dropped and lots of people died. So the crystal forms very differently then there. You play classical music for the water. No joke, you guys. You play heavy metal for the water. The crystals form differently. We are 72 to some say as high as 85% water. What does that say about us and how we react to vibration and emotion? And you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, it's all intertwined. I mean, that's definitely elemental magic. I would say attunement, understanding how nature weaves in and out of our experience, and how even, cosmic transits that are going on in the world right now in the air is impacting all of us at a certain time. Yeah, it's attunement. And I did want to mention this because I wrote it in my notes here, that I think, talking about pleasure and the other side of that was like pain. The thing that comes up for me a lot, especially in my journey of astrology and my passion around it and studying the stars, is it's really important to me when I think about pleasure priestess and this journey of pleasure, is to understand that like pleasure to me is discipline. For example, it's being able to show up for the initiation that's before me. For example, I work with Chiron, the wounded healer. And sometimes it can get a bad rap because wounded healer, like that whole question of like, why would I want to look at my wounds? It's too painful. Yet the path of pleasure is the one of being able to face your wound and face the parts of you that are in the shadow. And so anyways, I just wanted to make that little moment and point, because if you are going through, maybe you feel numb. Earlier you asked me a question about, how to move through some blocks. I would really look at when you were born, what does your natal chart reveal around where Chiron is? For example, one of my major wounds is actually in the 6th house of Leo. So it's all about discipline and using my voice and being able to be seen. So it's like I found the discipline. Even this podcast is all about being seen and showing up and being consistent. So I'm literally healing as I share, which is great. It's a journey of itself, but I guess that's something more of on a practical level. If someone's listening and you're like, oh my God, okay, pleasure, yes, but like how, or like why, how to go about that? Like beyond the sensuality part, like the body and, connecting to your body and slowing down and smelling the roses. Like we have roses here. Like really consider looking at your own natal chart. And it's very simple. You just go to astro.com. You just put in your birth time. You could see it. Usually you could see Chiron on there. If not, you just go to the bottom of the page and you'll see an asteroid list, and you just need to click Chiron. Or you can just reach out to me. And
I was going to say, or you can seek out a professional like you who can,
which I love, because
guide and interpret.
Yeah, and that's a big part of like pleasure priestess path for me. It's not always sensuality and the body, the body's great, and I can see a lot of where someone is in their chart, especially at the 1st house and the relationships with their body. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out because it's really helped me experience more pleasure, because when I'm able to know my soul and my why of being here, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool to know. There's so much pleasure in knowing, especially too if you're new to like astrology. There's a solar return chart, which is your birthday chart for the year. Like there's also a progressed charts, which is all about like how your soul's progressing, especially your moon sign, where the moon is in your chart over 2.5 years, every 2.5 years. There's also something called annual perfections, which is giving you the theme of the year. There's just so much information that can like bring you that pleasure and bliss. I know it's helped me because it's cracked me open. I love being able to see myself and be like, of course. Like that's who I am. So yeah, I found pleasure in the cosmos, which is so fun because I'm I'm a multidimensional being like you.
Well, that's, if we look at indigenous peoples, their definition of shaman is one who walks between worlds.
Yeah,
that's the literal translation. Somebody that can step into a different realm and then bring something back with them. I mean, this is the classic Joseph Campbell hero's journey, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on that in another way right now.
But whether it's literally going to another world, bringing something back, or just being the channel, so that something comes through, and sometimes that something is just a feeling or a vibration, and that's all the person needs to kickstart the next step.
I heard that actually in a mastermind I'm in right now with a bunch of women that are so high vibe, wealth conscious. It's like boom, boom, boom. And this woman's like, yeah, I think it's 7-figure, almost 8-figure entrepreneur, female. And she was talking about how she joined this mastermind and like, she doesn't even really show up for it, but she's in the group. Like she's in the vortex. It's actually called her group is called the vortex, but it really spoke to me that, she's just in the room. She's in the energy field and she allows herself to go to that place. And I think that's where I'm at. Like for me, I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot going on this earth plane. Like I've been reminded, and this is what I love about us walking between worlds, is like we're able to tap into, because we're tapped in, right? We're tapped into other dimensions because we're doing the inner work. And this is how I see it. Like The more you're doing that inner work, the more you're aligning and you're shifting realities quickly, and you're like, you are on that path. You know it, you feel it. It can feel like you're maybe losing everything's falling apart, but the path of shamanism and what we're doing, and not even just that, but finding the pleasure in that is riding the wave. Is like, for me, like the universe and my higher self, because all your selves, that my mentor told me this, your inner self, your prior self, your present self, and your higher self was actually your internal dialogue. She said that. I was like, it made me realize, oh my gosh, this is like internal family systems. Of course it is. But it made me realize, like, this life pleasure is you and you. Pain, pleasure, you discovering it, you going through this human experience is you and you. And yet there are people like you and I that are like, we get it. Like,
you're not alone.
And that one thing, like you were saying, and that one, like you were mentioning, that one sentence that one person mentioned could catalyze you moving into your next level. And that's what I was trying to allude to as well. Like, this woman in this mastermind, she heard this one thing and it shifted something in her vibration, and she was like, so yeah.
You reminded me of something when, because I spent some time in Japan training with martial artists and, also with monks. And we started our morning with a very simple prayer. And it's, in Japanese, it's 𝗓𝗓𝗄𝗧𝗓𝗄𝗓. Translation, and you can't translate it exactly. The best you can do is paraphrase, but every encounter could be the last one that I need before reaching enlightenment.
Powerful.
Every person, every situation, you never know what that last little that you need is. So live life like every moment has that potential, basically. 𝗓𝗓𝗄𝗧𝗓𝗄𝗓. And we literally said that every morning as a group to remind each other. Go throughout your day.
Go throughout your day.
Treating every moment with reverence. Here again, back to reverence and devotion, because you don't know which one it is. That's the one you need to reach enlightenment until it happens.
Yeah. And not to give up too, because this life your soul has chosen to be here to go through these initiations. And a lot of the time, and this is what so many people that I follow say, it's like, if you're doing the work, if you're showing up for yourself, if you're allowing yourself to recalibrate your internal world, because that's where the shifts happen. If you want your external reality to shift, you want to experience more pleasure, you're going to have to go within yourself. You're going to have to face, why do I not believe I'm worthy of pleasure? Why am I allowing myself, XYZ? And it's not from a judgment place, but it's from a place of like, oh my gosh, like for example, I desire, and I already have it, like to be walking and living in a chateau, and like to have that, and I feel it in my body, and it's like, yes, oh my God, like, and to walk in my dance studio and just like the feeling of it. And so this is the power of like, talking about pleasure priestess, because I mean, this is totally going after like what I'm personally going through in my up level journey, is like these wealth codes of like the wealth of mastering this, allowing that monkey mind to just like truly connect with your ego, but don't let your ego, guide everything to keep you in protection. Because on the other side of maybe you facing your pain is the pleasure. Maybe, I mean, how many times have I experienced that? So many times where, I mean, it's been a journey to receive, even in our relationship. I mean, just receiving love and like receive. Even at the beginning of our relationship, I was like resistant in a lot of ways, I would say, to just pleasure, because I was, I didn't have a lot of experience, to be honest. But with commitment and with allowing myself to expand, like I broke through some barriers, and that's the journey of life. I also think like the wealthy mindset is like challenging yourself. You know, like not pushing yourself to the point of like overwhelm, but to the point of allowing yourself to stretch a little bit. Like I was mentioning earlier, your nervous system expanding, allowing yourself to receive, you know. And I also can look at how someone's breathing as a connection to how they're receiving.
100%.
When I have a shortness of breath, I'm like, oh my God, am I gonna, like, what am I holding on?
Because you're breathing up here, short, shallow
Right.
little breaths. It's not penetrating deep into your
Right. You know, it reminds me of, you talked about when you went to train, what was it, Japan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just like Qigong, like it reminds me of that practice I used to do a lot more. But yeah, like being able to breathe from the earth. I think you showed me that at the beginning of our relationship at Periwinkle Park. I think you even showed me, you invited me to put my feet on the earth. And I remember you like inviting me to like, you know, caress my legs and then put my hands all the way up into the sky and
Well, connect with your roots going deep into the ground and
Right.
pull that breath,
Embodiment.
pull that energy
yeah, I didn't understand that.
up from the roots, up through your legs. You
Yeah.
didn't understand that at the time? Or you did?
I mean, I was connected at the time when we met, like to the earth, but I wasn't like, yeah, I didn't know the fullness of you. I was like, who's this guy?
Not me. They don't know the fullness of you.
Oh, I know.
See,
Well,
and you see, I remember that moment when you
Mhm.
did feel it.
really? That's powerful.
Because suddenly your eyes went. And they said, oh my God, without your lips having to form it.
Yeah. That's a wild moment. To go to the beginning. Yeah.
But these are the types of experiences a priestess leads you to. You know, helps you on your path. They're like, it's like once a priestess is able to do this for herself, then she can like, you know, she can work as a guide to assist others on the journey. Something I'd like to speak into, because this whole time, you know, we've been speaking priestess in the feminine form, you know, which like in Tantra, you know, we would say daikini.
Okay.
And there is also Daka, there's the male counterpoint. We haven't really spoken into the masculine side, and it doesn't have to be gender, you know, energy-wise, like the masculine polarity of the priestess archetype. And I know it's interesting. One of the things, remember I told you when we met, that I saw in a vision and really felt strongly intuitively, it really resonates. Like literally somebody made a post about exactly that thing today.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked ChatGPT, what is the role of men in the, you know, awakening of the divine feminine and the shift that's happening right now overall. And it said, well, the men who awaken first, they will protect and support the women as they go through their transformation and awakening.
Mm.
And the women go first so that they can then help the men, the rest of the men. That's kind of the way the prophecy came across. And it's not a better than, worse than, it's just because of your stronger intuition, because the feminine is naturally already either connected to source or feeling it intuitively without knowing what it is. So you're closer. It doesn't take that much more to get there. But remember, for every soul that awakens, like the energy of the planet itself shifts some. So it's not even necessarily that you have to physically interact with anybody else. The act of you shifting shifts somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've just altered the overall collective wavelength in doing so. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But that, and this person's post said her chat with GPT kind of had the same result. That it's like the women need to awaken first, you know, because the men might need their guides, you know.
Yeah, both
and not men, not men, but like,
It's all.
Mm-hmm.
I would say both.
Well, the energy, the feminine, even on a purely energetic point. I mean, this is why electrons move through cables and create electricity.
Mm-hmm.
The feminine always pulls, the feminine always lures the masculine energy to move towards it.
Mm. Yeah, it's a dance.
It's a dance. Push and pull.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's a dance between. I mean, we all have both energies, and we're all mirrors at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, I feel like the pleasure piece it's like, I truly believe everyone can embody it, but it is the connection to your heart. It's connection to your pleasure for yourself and yourself first, and understanding that when you take responsibility for your pleasure and what brings you joy and what nourishes your soul and your unique blueprint, that's what makes the world a better place, because you are coming from a place of fullness, right? You're whole. You've met yourself, and that's what I feel like. If there's anything that just being a human amongst humans, it's really reminded me and helped me see, like, there are cracks in the pavement, and I could see them more clearly now, and I can see them in myself more, and just from observing, when there is self-nourishment going on. Because when we nourish ourselves, when we love ourselves, and whatever that looks like, and that can look like finding the balance between your beautifully crafted workout plan and also making sure you have some like waffles and chocolate. You know what I mean? Like, pleasure is
waffles and chocolate essential for spiritual growth.
It's finding balance. It's finding the dance between, like, you're here to live life, right? And the universe is not here to punish you. You're not a victim. You don't need to be part of a drama triangle. And if you are being part of the drama triangle, which I think a lot of us have, I know I have, it's really important to just acknowledge, where are you giving your power away? And if you're giving your power away, allow yourself to bring that power back into your body, and really just declare, like, across all time and space reality, I take my power back. This is my body. This is my space. And this is a great time, especially to be doing that, because we're approaching that full moon and that eclipse portal. And so you might be feeling a lot of shedding, a lot of, like, purging and release. So clear the things out that are maybe not bringing you pleasure. You're not lighting you up. It's okay. It's a time to release. It's time to remember. And here's the thing: when you're letting go of things, whether that's yourself, like, I feel like there's a part of me dying right now. I'm like, behind the scenes. I know it's because I'm recalibrating, and my body's recalibrating to receive another level of me. And I'm like, sure. So
another download, another transmission.
It's all perspective. It's the perspective of life that it's always fascinating. It's fascinating. Keep going, persevere. You're on the right path. And if you're here in this community and you're found this talk show's podcast, like,
it's
thank you.
It's not by accident. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in, first of all. And second of all, know that it's not by accident. These things are never by accident.
Yeah.
If anything, the pursuit of the path of the mystic has taught me to expect the unexpected, to not expect at all. Like, you can make the most careful plans, and magic, the universe, synchronicity, fate, whatever you want to call it, will find a way to deviate from that plan and surprise you anyway. And that is part of the journey, really.
Absolutely. It's learning to surrender.
I'm trying to remember the quote from Lord of the Rings. Not all those who wander are lost.
Yeah. There's a dance, and we're still in, Pisces season. It's like there's a lot of mysticism out there. It's the season of the mystic, and it's also, take care of yourself, allow yourself. We're in a Pisces, Virgo nodes of fate right now. So it is that balance between, like, surrender, allow for the mystic to be present, and also like creating the structures that you need. I know I've learned this a lot lately, like creating the structure for you to be wild and allow yourself to go there as well. It's a balance. That's my thoughts there as well. But yeah, I love the mystic. I mean, I consider myself the tantric mystic.
I mean, yeah. By the way, the tantric mystic is her handle on Instagram if you want to find those cool videos of her dancing Lady Gaga. I'm at 𝗂𝗓𝗍𝗔𝗂𝗍, and yeah, we always welcome your comments, questions, suggestions for future episodes. You know, we love to hear what you're creating in your life and maybe where you feel your blocks might be.
Yeah.
Reach out, say hi. Venus retrograde, you mentioned. I think that's worth touching on because that's exactly kind of the force at play here. A lot of people, you know, oh, Venus is the planet of love, retrograde, I'm going to have issues in my relationship, so do I have to brace for a breakup? I read a few astrologers and they all agree, like, this is not the time for a breakup. Now, obviously, if you're in a really bad situation, you know, be safe. I cannot possibly say for everybody, but in general, it's actually misinterpreted. It's not the time for breakups. It is the time, retrograde, going backwards. It is the time for going back in your past and finding those places, those times where you were wounded. And healing those. Retrograde isn't always a bad thing. It just means backwards. And in this case, it's a very, very profound healing from finding and, you know, giving some love, some tender love to those painful points that you've forgotten about. Because when you do, you not only clear the block, you release that energy. And now that energy can be used for other things.
You're very attuned.
Every time you release a piece of blocked energy, that's more energy you have to work with. So capacity is a part of it. And then freeing up this energy that's been stuck for so long is the other part of it. You know?
Yeah, Venus retrograde is pretty powerful, and there's so much to it. And I would definitely recommend receiving a astrology reading. I'd be happy to help you identify. There's a few things with Venus retrograde. I would look at 4 major Venusian asteroids in your chart, and specifically I would look at Venus herself and look how she's revealing in which house and which sign. Well, no, she's in Aries actually right now. So yeah, I would just really take a moment to consider receiving a reading. But it's an exciting time. It's a lot of things are coming up around self-worth, self-love, whatever that looks like in your world, and be happy to support you.
Yeah, you can get in touch. Instagram page, I know at least my profile at 𝗂𝗓𝗍𝗂𝗍. You know, you'll see the links there. My the website link, the podcast link. Also, I just added them to the YouTube channel that you might be watching this on. Same thing. If you go to the links section, you'll see it listed among them. But visit the website. You'll see. You can read more about who we are, what we do, the kind of offerings we have, and how to get in touch. Yeah, that's what I would say. Find those links on Instagram and or YouTube. And any final thoughts, takeaways? I mean, I feel
I'm feeling really good. Yeah, I mean,
I feel complete.
Yeah, just being kind to yourself. Like in this journey, like this is something I would say to myself right now, and I would talk to myself as "Oh, darling," because that's how I'm writing to myself right now. But allow the unknown to bring you the mysteries that are in the shadows. Allow yourself permission to celebrate the end and the new beginning. For when you accept yourself, forgive yourself, and drop into the unique miracle that is you, that it's miraculous, that you are a soul in a human bodysuit. It's pretty cool. So yeah, allow yourself to just be, allow yourself to dream a little dream and go be in your pleasure, whatever that means. You know, for me, it's been like walking and loving myself pleasure rituals. It's been writing. I'm allowing myself, and I reflect back that to you. Like, I'm excited to hear from you guys. And like you're mentioning the link in the bio on our Instagrams, there's also an opportunity for you to fill out your information if you want to be part of like our email list. And as well, if you are interested in asking us questions about like what to talk about on the podcast, there's also a form at the bottom of that major link. It's the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 link. So would love to hear from you. And I'm, again, really appreciative of you and you, beloved. You're amazing. And yeah, we've been going through quite an intense, beautiful transition and beautiful growth periods, and I'm loving it. And it's like,
well, with a full moon, blood moon eclipse also coming up at 2
I'm like
days.
holding on. Everyone's holding on.
The night of the 13th into the 14th, you guys.
Oh my God, that's a really intense. Yeah.
It's a good opportunity to
clear energy, clean your home. Shed. I would even say like write things down now, even if you hear this on a Tuesday. Release, let go, dance. This has been fun.
I love that. Yeah. Dance, play. Breath, sound, movement.
All of it.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, you guys. Yeah. And we'll see you next week on the Tantric Awakening podcast.
Bye.
Bye-bye.